Let me guess. Some financial guru told you to save $1,000 for emergencies, and you'd be fine. Build that little cushion. Sleep better at night. Maybe it was Dave Ramsey. Maybe it was some Instagram finance bro with a rented Lambo. Doesn't matter. They lied to you. Not because they're evil, but because they're operating with data from a world that doesn't exist anymore. The year is 2026, and I'm going to show you the exact moment that advice became weaponized garbage that keeps you poor while making you feel responsible for your own financial suffocation. This isn't going to be comfortable. This is going to be the conversation nobody wants to have because it exposes how fundamentally broken the entire system has become. But here's the thing. You already know something is wrong. You feel it every single time you check your bank account. Every time you buy groceries. Every time you think about the future. That knot in your stomach? That's not anxiety. That's your survival instinct screaming that the math doesn't work anymore. So let's do the math. Let's pull apart every lie you've been fed. And then let's talk about what actually builds security in 2026. Because, spoiler alert, it's not $1,000 sitting in a savings account earning 0.05% while inflation eats it alive. Here's what $1,000 actually buys you in 2026. Let's say your car breaks down. Not totaled, just breaks down. Normal wear and tear. The serpentine belt snaps. The alternator dies. Something mundane. You take it to the mechanic. The diagnostic fee alone is $85 just to tell you what's wrong. The part? $350. Labor? Another $400 because shops now charge $120 an hour, and this job takes 3 to 4 hours. You're at $835 before tax. Add the tax, you're at $910. You drive home with $90 left in your emergency fund. 2 weeks later, your kid gets strep throat. The urgent care copay is $75. The antibiotics are $45 with insurance. Your emergency fund now has minus $30 in theoretical purchasing power because you had to put that $20 on a credit card. Your $1,000 safety net lasted 16 days, and nothing catastrophic even happened. This is normal life. This is Tuesday. This is the reality that financial advice from 2015 refuses to acknowledge. The broke millennial author would tell you this is fine. Just rebuild it. But here's what she won't tell you. You can't rebuild it. Because rebuilding implies you have excess income after expenses. And that's the lie we need to burn to the ground right now. Let's talk about the actual numbers that govern your life. The median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in a mid-tier American city in 2026 is $2,100. Not San Francisco, not New York. I'm talking Columbus, Ohio, Nashville, Phoenix, places that used to be affordable. That's your biggest expense, and it's $25,200 a year. The USDA says a single adult on a moderate food plan spends $320 per month. That's $3,840 annually. Your car insurance, if you're under 35 with a clean record, averages $210 per month. That's $2,520 yearly. Gas prices are hovering at $4.15 per gallon nationally. If you commute 30 miles round trip for work, you're burning through $165 monthly. That's $1,980 per year. Utilities: electric, water, internet, phone. Let's be conservative. $230 monthly. That's $2,760 annually. We haven't talked about health insurance premiums. We haven't discussed student loan payments. We haven't mentioned the random shit that just happens. Toiletries, oil changes, the work shoes that wore out, toothpaste, laundry detergent. The baseline cost of existing as a functional adult human in 2026, before you do anything fun, before you save a dime, is $36,300. The median individual income in the United States right now is $42,000. You have $5,700 of breathing room per year. That's $475 per month. And that's gross income. After taxes, you're closer to $32,000 take home. You're actually negative. You're drowning. And someone is telling you to save $1,000 like it means something. Now, the gurus will say this. They'll tell you to cut your latte. Stop eating avocado toast. Cancel Netflix. Move to a cheaper apartment. Get a roommate. Drive less. Let's do their math. You cut out a daily $5 coffee. That's $150 per month. You cancel your streaming services. That's another $60. You meal prep every single meal and never eat out. You save maybe $200 monthly. You're at $410 saved per month through lifestyle deprivation. Congratulations. You've eliminated every single source of joy from your life, and you're still not building wealth. You're treading water. Because that $410, half of it immediately disappears into the credit card debt you accumulated last year when your emergency fund failed. The other half goes into your pathetic high-yield savings account earning 4.35% annually while inflation runs at 3.8%. You're losing money in real terms while congratulating yourself for being disciplined. This is the trap. This is why the advice to save $1,000 is so insidious. It makes you feel like you're doing something responsible while the system continues to extract wealth from your labor. It's a psychological pacifier, a financial binky that keeps you from asking the real question. Why is the cost of basic survival so astronomically disconnected from what we're paid? Why does a studio apartment cost the equivalent of 40 hours of minimum wage work per month when in 1970 it cost 60 hours total? Why are we acting like personal responsibility is the answer to structural collapse? Let's go back. Let's talk about 1971. This is the year that everything broke. Richard Nixon ended the gold standard. Money stopped being tied to anything real. It became purely fiat currency. The government could print as much as they wanted. And they did. They printed money to fund wars, to bail out banks, to stimulate economies. And every single time they printed, your purchasing power eroded. The dollar you earned in 1971 is worth 15 cents today when adjusted for real inflation, not the cooked CPI numbers the government publishes. Your parents could buy a house for $39,000. They could pay for college with a summer job. They could raise 3 kids on a single income, not because they were smarter or more disciplined, because the economic structure rewarded labor instead of capital, because housing was shelter instead of a speculative asset class, because corporations hadn't yet figured out how to financialize every aspect of human existence. Fast forward to 2008, the financial crisis. The banks that destroyed the global economy got bailouts. Your neighbors got foreclosures. The Federal Reserve dropped interest rates to zero and started quantitative easing, which is a fancy term for printing trillions of dollars and handing them to Wall Street. Asset prices exploded. Stocks went up. Real estate went up. The cost of food, housing, healthcare, education went up. Your wages? Flat. Completely flat when adjusted for real inflation. This is why saving $1,000 is a joke. Because you're trying to build security with a currency that's actively being debased while the cost of survival inflates faster than your ability to earn. You're on a treadmill that's accelerating while someone yells at you to run faster. Here's what nobody tells you about money and your brain. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for long-term planning and impulse control, shuts down under chronic financial stress. When you're in survival mode, when you're constantly worried about making rent, about affording food, about what happens if your car dies, your brain literally cannot think beyond the immediate threat. This isn't weakness. This isn't a lack of discipline. This is neuroscience. Your amygdala, the fear center, takes over. It floods your system with cortisol. You make decisions based on short-term relief instead of long-term optimization. This is why broke people make bad financial decisions. Not because they're stupid, because their brains are operating in crisis mode 24/7. The dopamine system gets hijacked. Every small purchase becomes a hit of relief. Every minor indulgence becomes a pressure valve release. You know you shouldn't buy the takeout. You know you should pack a lunch. But the exhaustion of constantly denying yourself, combined with the neurochemical reality that your brain is starving for any positive stimulus, overrides the rational calculation. Then you feel guilty. You blame yourself. You internalize the message that you're bad with money. And the system wins again. Because as long as you're blaming yourself, you're not looking at the structural forces that created this situation. You're not organizing. You're not demanding change. You're just trying to be better at playing a rigged game. So what do we actually do? First, we get brutally honest. Not delusional optimism, not toxic positivity, honest. You sit down and you track every dollar for 30 days. Not to judge yourself, not to feel shame, to see the truth. You need to know exactly where the money goes. Use a spreadsheet, use an app, use pen and paper, doesn't matter. Category by category. Housing, transportation, food, insurance, debt payments, subscriptions, random bullshit, everything. At the end of this is uncomfortable. This is the part where most people quit, because seeing the truth means accepting that something has to change. And change is terrifying. But here's the thing. You cannot optimize what you cannot measure. You cannot fix a problem you refuse to see. So you look, you document, you accept reality as it is, not as you wish it were. Next, you audit every recurring expense with surgical precision. Your phone bill. Are you paying $85 for unlimited data you don't use? Switch to a $40 plan. Your car insurance. Have you shopped it in the last 2 years? Spend 30 minutes getting quotes. You can probably save $30 to $50 monthly. Your subscriptions. Netflix, Hulu, Disney+, Spotify, Amazon Prime, that gym membership you haven't used in 4 months. Cut everything you don't actively use weekly. This isn't about deprivation. This is about being intentional. Every dollar you spend is a vote for what you value. Are you voting for passive entertainment or for future freedom? Your grocery bill. This is the big one. You don't need to eat ramen every night, but you need to stop shopping without a plan. Meal prep on Sundays. Buy in bulk. Use store brands. Stop getting DoorDash. I know you're tired. I know cooking feels like one more thing on the endless list, but every time you order delivery, you're paying a 30% convenience tax plus tip plus fees. That $20 meal is actually $33. Do that twice a week and you're burning $3,400 annually. That's your emergency fund. That's 3 months of aggressive debt payment. That's the difference between drowning and building momentum. Now here's the part that makes everyone uncomfortable. You might need to increase your income. Not because you're bad at budgeting, because the math doesn't work at your current income level. This means having a deeply uncomfortable conversation with your boss. You need to schedule a meeting, you need to document your value. Projects completed, revenue generated, problem solved. You walk in with a number. Not, I'd like to discuss compensation. You say, based on my performance over the last year and the current market rate for my role, I'm requesting a salary increase to $62,000. They'll push back. They'll say budget constraints. You smile. You say, I understand. What would need to happen for us to revisit this in 3 months? You're not begging. You're negotiating. If they won't budge, you start applying elsewhere. I know that's scary. I know job searching is exhausting, but staying at a job that underpays you isn't loyalty. It's financial self-harm. Simultaneously, you need a side income. Not a hustle culture nightmare where you work 80 hours a week. Strategic income. Can you freelance your primary skill? Can you tutor? Can you sell something on Etsy or eBay? I'm not talking about getting rich. I'm talking about an extra $400 to $800 monthly. That's the margin that changes everything. Let's talk about debt. If you have high-interest credit card debt, student loans, car payments, you need a strategy. There are 2 schools. Dave Ramsey says pay smallest balance first for psychological wins. The math nerds say pay highest interest first to optimize dollars. Here's what I say. If your highest interest debt is absolutely crushing you psychologically, pay that first. You need the emotional relief. But if you can handle it, highest interest makes more sense mathematically. Either way, you're attacking it with focused intensity. Every extra dollar goes to that target debt, not into savings. This breaks the traditional advice, but here's why it works. If you have credit card debt at 23% interest and you're putting money into a savings account earning 4%, you're losing 19% annually. That's insane. Kill the high interest debt first, then build your emergency fund, then save for other goals. But here's the nuclear option nobody discusses. You call your credit card company. You say, I'm struggling to make payments. I'm considering bankruptcy. Can we discuss a hardship program? They will often reduce your interest rate or create a payment plan. They don't advertise this. You have to ask. You have to be willing to have the awkward conversation. Same with student loans. If you have federal loans, there are income-driven repayment plans that can cut your payment in half. Private loans are harder, but you can still negotiate. Refinance if your credit improved. The system wants you to pay the maximum. You need to fight for every advantage. Once you've stabilized, once you've cut the bleeding, once you've killed the high-interest debt, then we talk about building real wealth. Not a $1,000 emergency fund. Real wealth. Here's what that looks like. First, you build a 3-month emergency fund. Not 3 months of ideal spending, 3 months of bare survival. If you lost your job tomorrow, what's the absolute minimum you need to not be homeless? Rent, utilities, food, insurance. Let's say that's $3,000 per month. You need $9,000 in a high-yield savings account. Yes, inflation will eat it. That's fine. This money isn't for growth, it's for stability. It's so you can sleep at night. It's so a car repair doesn't send you into a debt spiral. You build this by automating. Every paycheck, $50, $100, whatever you can manage, automatically transfers to a separate savings account. You don't see it, you don't touch it, it just grows. This takes time. It might take a year. That's okay. You're building a foundation. Simultaneously, you're opening a brokerage account. Vanguard, Fidelity, Schwab. Doesn't matter. You're buying index funds. Specifically, you're buying a total stock market index fund or an S&P 500 index fund. This is not sexy. This is not crypto. This is not individual stocks. This is boring, diversified, low-cost index investing, and it's the most reliable wealth-building tool available to regular people. Here's why it works. The stock market has returned an average of 10% annually over the last century. Some years it's up 30%. Some years it's down 20%. But over time, it goes up. And when you own an index fund, you own a tiny piece of every major company. You own Apple and Microsoft and Coca-Cola and Johnson & Johnson. You own the entire economy. When the economy grows, you grow. You start small, $25 per paycheck, $50 if you can swing it. You automate this too. It comes out before you see it, before you can spend it. Over decades, this compounds. This is how middle-class people retire with seven-figure portfolios. Not through stock picking, not through crypto gambling, through consistent, boring, automated investing in index funds. Let's talk about the math of compounding because this is where it gets insane. Let's say you're 30 years old. You start investing $300 per month into an S&P 500 index fund. Historically, that returns 10% annually. By age 65, you'll have over $1 million. Let me repeat that. $300 per month for 35 years becomes $1.1 million. That's not magic. That's compound interest. That's the eighth wonder of the world, according to Einstein. Here's the brutal part. If you wait until you're 40 to start, you need to invest $650 monthly to hit the same million. If you wait until 50, you need to invest $1,600 monthly. Time is the most valuable asset you have. Not money, time. Every year you delay starting, you're forfeiting tens of thousands in future wealth. This is why a $1,000 emergency fund is garbage advice. It keeps you focused on short-term band-aids instead of long-term wealth building. Yes, you need some emergency savings. But once you have 3 months of expenses covered, every additional dollar needs to be working for you, growing, compounding, building the engine of future freedom. Here's the framework that changes everything. It's called the 4% rule. If you can build a portfolio of $1 million invested in index funds, you can withdraw 4% annually, adjusted for inflation, and never run out of money. 4% of $1 million is $40,000 per year. That's enough to live modestly in many parts of the country. That's financial independence. That's the ability to tell your boss to fuck off if they disrespect you. That's the ability to take a year off to travel or write or care for a sick parent. That's freedom. Not retirement at 65, not waiting until you're too old to enjoy life. Freedom in your 40s or 50s. This is possible. Not easy, not quick, but possible. It requires living below your means. It requires investing consistently. It requires ignoring the noise, the crypto bros, the day traders, the get-rich-quick schemes. It requires patience and discipline and a willingness to delay gratification. But it works. It's worked for millions of people, and it can work for you if you're willing to commit. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Some of you are reading this thinking, this is great for people with stable incomes and no kids and no chronic health issues and no massive student loan debt. You're right. The advice is harder to implement when you're starting from behind. But here's the truth. The system is rigged against you. You already know that. The question isn't whether it's fair. It's not. The question is, what are you going to do about it? You can rage against the machine, you can give up, or you can play the game better than they expect you to. Every dollar you save is a small act of rebellion. Every dollar you invest is a vote against the system that wants you desperate and dependent. Every month you stay out of new debt is a win. You might not retire at 50. You might not hit $1 million. But you can build a $5,000 emergency fund that actually covers emergencies. You can build a $20,000 investment portfolio that generates passive income. You can create options for yourself. You can move from survival to stability, and that matters. That's worth fighting for. Here's what money actually is. It's not about buying stuff. It's not about flexing on Instagram. It's not about keeping up with anyone. Money is freedom. It's the ability to say no to things that drain you. It's the ability to say yes to opportunities that excite you. It's the buffer between you and catastrophe. It's the foundation for building a life that doesn't revolve around anxiety and scarcity. Every financial decision you make is either moving you toward freedom or away from it. When you buy the designer hoodie you can't afford, you're trading future freedom for present status. When you finance a car that's more than you need, You're trading freedom for convenience. When you invest in index funds, when you pay off debt, when you build your emergency fund to a real number, you're buying freedom. Month by month, dollar by dollar. This is the long game. This is what actually matters. The year is 2026. $1,000 in emergency savings is a cruel joke perpetuated by a financial advice industry that hasn't updated its assumptions in 2 decades. The cost of living has exploded. The purchasing power of currency has collapsed. The social safety net has disintegrated. You cannot play by 1990s rules in a 2026 economy. You need a 3-month emergency fund minimum. You need to eliminate high-interest debt. You need to automate your investing. You need to learn the basics of index funds and compound interest. You need to have uncomfortable conversations about money with your employer, your credit card companies, yourself. This isn't going to be easy. Nobody is going to hand you financial security. You're going to have to fight for it. You're going to have to make sacrifices. You're going to have to delay gratification. You're going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. But on the other side of that discomfort is something real, not wealth in the Instagram sense, stability, options, the ability to breathe, the knowledge that you can handle whatever comes next. That's what you start today. You automate your first transfer to savings. You schedule the meeting with your boss. You cut the subscriptions you don't use. You open the brokerage account. You take the first step. And then tomorrow, you take another. And another. Until one day you look up and realize you're not scared anymore. You realize you have options. You realize you built something real. That's the goal. That's what actually matters. Not overnight wealth, not lottery tickets, not crypto moonshots. Just steady, consistent, disciplined progress toward a life where money stops being a source of anxiety and starts being a tool for freedom. Stop complicating it. Start getting free.